Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Roadside vehicle checks, the 2016-17 Isle of Man budget, and a move to one-part driving licences, which is some of the issues up for discussion this week. Here's Stu Peters.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
How long should drivers who import vehicles be given to get them onto Manx registration plates? Drivers who've purchased vehicles from across the water are being reminded that the new paperless UK system means that vehicles imported to the Isle of Man are effectively untaxed from the moment they arrive. How long do you think is reasonable to expect a vehicle to be transferred to Manx registration plates? Is 6 weeks acceptable, or would an even shorter window be more appropriate? Have UK registered vehicles become more of a problem in the island in recent times, or is this something that's always been an issue? Tell us what you think about this. This is the legality of it. If a vehicle is exported from the UK, then whoever you bought the vehicle from, whether that be a private individual or a mainstream garage, must tell the DVLA that the vehicle is being exported to the Isle of Man. As soon as this is done, then the UK tax on the vehicle becomes null and void immediately. And in essence, you could be driving a vehicle on the island with no tax in place at all from the moment you disembark the boat. That's the worry about this. Reference number plates. Does that mean the police will be picking up tourists? Says Rusty. No. To the lines, and we've got Malcolm on about this. Hello, Malcolm.
I had a similar problem recently in importing a car from Southend, as it happens. Yeah. So it's obviously a popular place to buy cars from. Now, I overcame it by a very convoluted process as follows. Firstly, I told my insurance company I was buying the car, so I got insurance from the moment I picked it up.
Sure.
Secondly, I arranged to get it through the Manx test within a week of returning the vehicle. So in other words, I had the date booked in advance.
Yes.
Thirdly, I asked the private seller of the vehicle not to contact DVLA in order to cancel his tax. And I signed a letter of indemnity to him that I would indemnify him against any instance should they occur between when I took the vehicle from him and getting it home.
Right.
So if I went through red traffic lights or got stopped, it would be my problem, not his. Of course. So therefore, the radar wouldn't say that the vehicle was uninsured.
Good thought, yeah.
And then, and I had told my insurance company I was doing this because they understood the dilemma that from the moment that you purchase it, you would have no road fund tax and you couldn't get any in the Isle of Man until the vehicle, which was more than 3 years old,
had been through the test.
Had gone through a test.
Yeah.
So that's how I did it, very convoluted. But what I did do is I made sure that as soon as I got off the boat, I drove home. I did not use the vehicle until I drove it from home to the vehicle licensing centre.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, it's just a shame though because you just bought a new car, you want to be using the thing, not leaving it on the driveway. So, but that is a way of doing it. I suppose if you'd have bought it from a dealer and it was in a showroom and didn't have any tax on it, then you couldn't have done that.
No, well, I had considered that, and what the dealer said is you get 6 months road fund tax or 12 months, whatever their deal is, because quite often they will sell
it's
your
included,
car with
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then when you get home, then you would have to tax it. But when I investigated that further, DVLA said, no, sir, you cannot buy road fund tax because you're an Isle of Man resident. Unless you've got a UK address, you can't have UK tax.
Well, I would have thought that would be the case, but John reckons that he didn't have a problem with that, so I'm not quite sure who's right. Well, John's obviously done it. Now, whether or not the dealers that he bought from have sorted it.
Yeah, I'm sure John is absolutely right. I didn't have that issue because my vehicle was second-hand and I bought it from a private individual who was amenable to me doing that. I mean, he could quite easily have refused. He could have just said, no, you take the vehicle, it's your problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Oh, well, so there are two potential ways around this. Thanks for the call, Malcolm. We've got Michael on. Hello, Michael.
Well, slightly to the side of it, as I understand from pretty reliable sources, when the UK DVLA introduced this system, the intention was to save money.
Yes.
And I gather that thus far it's cost them 80 million. But they've apparently proposed to save 10 million. They've actually cost them an additional 80.
Oh, good. It's not just our government then that gets these things wrong.
No, that's right. They've really made a total
Yes.
Horlicks of it.
Right.
So, pretty unimpressive.
Right. Okay. So
apart from all the inconvenience it is causing everybody.
So it's causing all sorts of problems, and it's costing a lot more money. Yeah.
A lot more money, yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Thanks for that, Michael. Who'd have thought that the UK government could get anything so wrong, if that's true? No reason to disbelieve, Michael. Stu, this all sounds utterly ridiculous. I agree with you. How do the authorities tell the difference between a car that's been brought over permanently and one used by holidaymakers? And for those moving to the Isle of Man and bringing their car, naturally there'd need to be a grace period for cars over 3 years old to allow them to get tested for roadworthiness, says Nick. Dave, who says he buys all his cars in the UK, an issue that hasn't been considered is what happens if the VSC, the logbook, ends up being sent to the DVLA by the person you bought the car off to notify the change of ownership. You can wait 6 to 8 weeks for the form to be returned to you. UK garages are not keen on letting you have the full VSC when you buy a car. The main dealers insist on taxing the car before you take it. But as you don't have a UK address, the DVLA will return the tax payment back to you. Again, this can take quite a few weeks. Oh, one more thing, you can have a car insured without it being taxed. How would you take the car to be MOT'd if it wasn't insured? I thought that was that particular journey was kind of covered by legislation. Hi, Stu. It's people that are buying cheap cars for cash that are not giving the seller their address or correct address. They then bring the vehicle over here and park where they like for as long as they like because parking fines have no address to send to. Police say they can only do something about it if they stop the vehicle, though the parking fine department should alert them to where there are lots of unpaid fines on a single vehicle. There are plenty doing that here at the moment, says John. Yeah, I think, I don't know if it was you that told us about that last week, John. I'm pretty sure no road tax doesn't invalidate your insurance if it's a customs and excise offence, not a road traffic offence. But I stand to be corrected, says Paul. Well, you might be right, Paul. It's just that in my experience, if an insurance company can get out of paying for a claim by any means at all, generally speaking, they'll do it. So I wouldn't hold your breath on that one. If you buy a car from Motorpoint, they arrange 5 days free insurance to get the vehicle to a place to retax and insure it. It's called drive-away cover. Okay. When I bought my motorbike last year, I paid for UK tax with my Isle of Man address to allow me to ride it to the ferry. Interesting. I have a colleague who's been driving on UK plates for 6 months. I've talked to the cops, but they've not bothered to take any action. Stu, the problem of Manx residents driving around in vehicles with UK licence plates has definitely become more prevalent ever since the stealth tax specialists in Treasury made Manx vehicle excise duty more expensive than the corresponding UK rates. In the good old days, it was a no-brainer to cash in what was left on the more expensive UK licence disc and buy a cheaper Manx one. Yeah. Now the balance is the other way around. A lot of people seem determined to take a chance on putting off registering the vehicle on the island for as long as they can. These people are robbing the Treasury of income, and the road policing unit is fully justified in pursuing them. Some people are dual residents of the island in the UK because of continuing commitments that they have there. The same balance applies to them, and I know of one dual resident who's recently traded in a Manx registered car and replaced it with a UK registered one with the consequent loss of income to our Treasury, says John W. What about English registered police cars used here during TT, asks Mark. Again, Mark, if it's legal to use it in the UK, then it'll be legal to use it here under whatever reciprocal agreements that we've got internationally about things like that. Simple solution is DVLA accept Isle of Man address for UK tax rather than trying to find loopholes. That's a way, yeah. What about the UK vehicles that are here permanently? They're using our roads free with no contribution to the taxation, says Rob. Again, if it's a short-term thing, Rob, I don't have a problem with it. If it's here long-term, then it needs to be on Manx plates, doesn't it? Put the tax on fuel. All vehicles on the island then automatically taxed as soon as they get off the boat. Problem solved. Yes. Comment here, you're not allowed to leave a UK showroom unless the car is taxed. Showrooms in the UK have facilities on site to online tax a car 24/7. The dealer becomes liable. I would suggest that notices be printed explaining the legal position and that the steam packet crew place one under the wipers of all vehicles with UK registrations travelling to the island. The notices would need to explain the differences between a visitor's vehicle and one that's been purchased by a local resident. That from David. And not a bad idea either. Thank you very much for that, David.
The Nation Station. Manx Radio.
Do you welcome moves to target drivers of vehicles with defects? Yesterday, police launched a new scheme which aims to improve the roadworthiness of vehicles on the island's roads. The constabulary now have new powers to ensure that those told to get defects sorted out do just that. So, are you pleased with this development? Could this help to motivate drivers to maybe get defaults and problems dealt with before potentially facing roadside checks? Or since drivers can only be forced to get the vehicles fixed if they're caught, will this have little impact on the number of defective cars on Manx roads? Let's go to the lines. We've got John on about this. Hello, John.
Yeah, there are a lot of cars going around with one headlamp bulb out, which I've been on before because of the cost of replacing them these days. Yeah. But not only that, there are a lot of cars where both lights are working, and when they dip, one of them is so badly adjusted that you're still getting dazzled. Sometimes it's the near side, sometimes it's the off side. But the roadside checks are going to check that the bulb is working, but they're not going to have a beam setter, a beam tester by the side of the road to check it. And that's where a big problem is.
Yes.
Now, the other thing, too, I don't know whether you've noticed, I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but push bikes these days, some of them have got extremely bright lights.
Oh, flashing sort of LED lights and things.
Not only the flashing ones. I was dazzled the other night by a light, and I thought, what the hell is it? And when I got there, it was a push bike with they must be LED lights or something. And I agree with the flashing ones where they have a flashing red light and a flashing light. That can be very confusing.
Yes.
This flashing light. And I think, actually, it is illegal to have a flashing red light at the back. I may be wrong, but it is very misleading, because when you see a flashing light, you think it's an indicator.
Yeah, true. Yeah, or an emergency service, Yeah,
it can be confusing, but they are extremely bright, these lights.
They are. They're almost like camera flashes, aren't they?
Yeah, I thought it was a motorcycle, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And let's put it, some of these push bikes now, they're going a lot faster than what you expect.
I was driving through Douglas the other night, and at various points throughout the drive, I got behind cars that had got one tail light out, and in both cases it was on the driver's side. And the trouble with that is, if you're driving down a dark road or whatever, and you've got the driver's side rear lights out, you assume it's a motorbike, and you might not give it a wide enough berth.
And I see a lot of drivers don't know. I mean, your car, my car, maybe, it comes up on the dash. If any bulb goes out, it indicates there is a certain bulb out.
That's true.
But not all cars have got that.
No. And people say, well, it's down to the drivers. The drivers ought to do these things and check But I would suggest that very few drivers actually do any of those things that we're supposed to do. Check the oil and the water levels and things like that.
You could go around and check your car when you go out now, and everything's working.
Yeah.
You get half a mile down the road, and one of the bulbs are blown.
What do you think about the idea of MOTs, John?
Well, providing it is done by, like, the test centre or a government department, not by private garages.
I agree.
Because if it's done by private garages, it's open to them.
It's a licence to print money, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It should be done by an independent... Oh, yeah, there should have been an MOT here years ago.
Yeah. Any idea why we never introduced it when the UK did?
I don't know. It's the same. Well, I mean, let's face it, the overall speed limit. We know why there's no overall speed limit, because of the TT.
Right.
And we used to have a lot of bikers staying with us, and they said if there was a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit on the island, they wouldn't come for the TT.
Yeah.
And that's why the government don't introduce it.
OK, but, I mean, as far as an MOT, we usually mirror UK legislation, don't we? Most things. I'm surprised that we never brought this in.
I really don't know why they don't go ahead with it, because, let's face it, if it's done independently by a government department like the test centre, it is still providing work for the local garages, because they've got to go somewhere to get it fixed.
Of course, and it would provide work for... I mean, you'd probably need 4 test centres, north, west, east and south.
You'd need more staff, you would need more staff.
Yeah, but I mean, that's creating jobs, and we're constantly looking at ways of creating jobs, so I can't really see a downside to it, I must admit.
It's a sensible thing, because, I mean, let's face it, they do enough daft things, so when it comes to a sensible thing, they don't bother.
All right. Thank you very much for your call, John. Hello, Howard.
Just something you mentioned a minute ago about insurance.
Oh, yeah.
When I retired, of course, you're on a fixed income, so I wanted to try and reduce my insurance. And one of the questions that the company asked me, or they said it was their suggestion, as I was no longer commuting to work, they could reduce my insurance.
Yeah.
And that actually dropped by £30, and that's 7 years ago.
Yes.
It's a considerable amount on an annual insurance.
Of course, yeah.
My car's due for insurance in this next week, and I've just been down checking. And one of the questions that they asked, so it's still relevant, are you commuting to work?
Yes.
So if you're not, it's one way of saving a few bob that, well, it can go towards maintenance or otherwise, but that's just one of the ways of reducing your insurance.
It is, definitely.
I don't know what it would come to now, but as I say, £30 at that time was quite a considerable amount.
Sure. The concern is that people retire, so they might remove that from their insurance policy, then get a bit of a part-time job somewhere and forget to put it back on, I suppose is the worry.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether or not, if you volunteered to help out with a charity or something, whether that would be counted as commuting to work.
Yeah.
So you need to double-check with your broker, I think.
Well, that's it. That's it. It's Belt and Brace's job.
Yes.
But,
no, it's good advice, that. Yeah.
But you're talking about the MOTs, etc. Why they're only valid actually for the day they were done in the garage, etc. The minute you drive out of the depot, the garage, then although they have been approved, it doesn't mean the car is roadworthy.
Well, yes, and I mean, I think that's a bit of a technicality, to be honest. The fact is that if you've taken your car and it's been scrutinised by an engineer or somebody who's qualified to test it, then, they're going to spot anything that's dangerous. And people say, well, the minute you drive out of the test centre, it doesn't mean anything, really. I think it does. And I'm not saying it's a fail-proof system, but, I do think that it's a good thing that your vehicle is checked over by somebody at least once a year.
Oh, yes, by all
and,
means.
The majority of cars in the Isle of Man aren't ever checked, I don't think.
No. Well, mine's due any time now, so it'll be going into the garage and it'll have a full Monty.
Yes, good.
But that's for my own benefit. But a lot of people are running their cars on shoestrings.
Absolutely, yeah, and I understand that. But
well, this is through their choice, and they will cut corners or do without certain things just to ensure that they're mobile.
And some people have to do that. They've got no choice. They've got to stay on the road, and they find it very difficult to afford. But it's where you draw the line as far as road safety is concerned. We all know that there are some real wrecks driving around, aren't there?
There's one or two, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for your call, Howard. Let's go to line 1, and we've got Chris on. Hello, Chris.
I'm a member of the Vintage Motorcycle Club, and we campaign strongly against MOTs.
Right.
And one of our great supporters was a traffic cop of 30 years' experience.
Right.
And what his job was, if there was an accident, one of his parts of his job was that he would look at the vehicle, and if he thought the accident had been caused by an MOT failure vehicle, it would be sent to the test centre.
Yeah.
And we've got a letter from this gentleman, and in his 30 years' experience, there was only one vehicle that would have been an MOT failure.
Right.
And that was a great thing that we presented to the Minister.
Yeah.
But another thing that really annoyed us at the Vintage Club, Stu, was when we went to the Minister, we didn't go totally negative, against MOTs. We had good reasons. And we also had 10 things that we put to the Minister that would be very low cost, that would save people's lives or accidents.
Yeah.
Simple road signs, simple mirrors like in Mackled at the tram lines.
Yes.
So if you're in a van, because I have a van, and I love my van, but I've got a blind spot on the left when I'm at an angle at tram lines. We requested mirrors there that have never been put up. Right. We requested 10 really good positive things, and to the best of my knowledge, they weren't interested and they've never been implicated.
Well, it's because it wasn't their idea, that's why, Chris.
Yeah, but it's just crazy.
I know.
Yeah. So realistically, with the help of this police officer and his 30 years' experience of road traffic incidents, I mean, that must be the ultimate man to talk to. And his strong letter that he gave us to present to the Minister, that was one reason, I believe, why we don't have the MOTs.
All right, fair dues.
And I really don't think that they're necessary on the island. It was a money-making fact, because we discussed the facts to the Minister about the money and everything. And that's just my opinion, and the Vintage Motorcycle Club's opinion.
No, well, and that's fair enough. I mean, the thing is that your members will be absolutely on top of maintenance because you take such pride in your machines. But there are a lot of people who don't. A car is just like a domestic appliance, and you get in it and turn the key, and as long as it works, it works. And I would suggest that an awful lot of people never do any checks at all. That's why there are so many one-eyed monsters driving on the roads.
Yeah, I'm not in favour of the one-eyed monsters for 1 minute. I actually got pulled up myself one day by a police officer coming out of Ramsey, and one of my lights went out, but it must have been on the way out. And the police officer was very good. He explained what the problem was, and it was excellent, and I corrected my light straight away when I got home.
Well, I think that the policing that we have in the Isle of Man is pretty good, and this is the sort of initiative that I think works well because, across they'd probably be giving people fixed penalty notices if they got bulbs out or whatever. In the Isle of Man, it's a case of, look, you've got a defect here, you've got 7 days to sort it out, and we'll say no more kind of thing. I think that's good policing, don't you?
Oh, definitely. The roadside checks, I'm not saying anything against them. They're very good. It's a good idea. The roadside checks are very good. But it's the MOTs that we're strongly against because we firmly believe, and we've got good evidence from genuine experts.
Yeah.
It is not needed on the island.
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm for them, but I take your point of view, and I think it's an important contribution. So, thank you very much for calling, Chris.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast, featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are you satisfied with the measures outlined in the budget for the forthcoming financial year? The Treasury Minister presented the 2016-17 Isle of Man budget to Tynwald members yesterday morning. Do you think the measures in the budget are to be welcomed? Do you support the increase in personal allowances? Or would you have liked to see that go even further? Maybe you think that they should have been left as they were. What other aspects of the budget have particularly caught your attention? And some interesting comments in. This one is about government purchasing. In Eddie Tear's budget yesterday, he highlighted the need for further constraints on future government procurement costs. He projected savings that are being sought over the next few years through competitive tendering for goods and services, and remarked that this may well be uncomfortable for existing suppliers. Whilst protecting taxpayers' funds is, of course, a laudable aim, Mr. Tear must surely recognise that in an economy as small as ours, the government itself is a very large consumer of goods and services. If the aim is to have local suppliers pitching against each other and those from further afield in a fight to the death for government contracts, it will not be without consequences for the public purse itself. Best case scenario is that business stays with a local contractor who's offered government a sharper price than hitherto. This will be achieved by cutting costs and profits and probably staff numbers. The government will therefore lose out on ITIP, national insurance and taxes on dividends, while having to pay benefits to those who lose their jobs. Even worse, the business may go off island, exacerbating the effect on the local economy, while the headlines will all be about the savings that the Treasury's made. Meanwhile, the Treasury will be scratching their heads wondering why their tax receipts are reduced. This is a classic case of the public sector turning the screw on the private sector to preserve their privileged position while following their stated policy of increasing the population to suit the size of the government. We keep hearing about the shortfall in DHSS funds, says Pat, until Tynwald stamps out the 0 hours and part-time contracts widely used by the big retailers to avoid paying national insurance contributions on the employees, while at the same time putting those employees in a position where they can claim top-up benefits from the state. Decreasing funds, then the DHSS will continue to hemorrhage. It's estimated that 80% in the retail trades are part-time or 0 hours contracts. This also gives a false employment figure, says Pat. Then at least you've still got somebody there. So I guess that this is from Percy, I guess that all our woes are down to the VAT being withdrawn by the UK government. However, rather than our politicians blaming the UK, they need to look within. They took that overinflated VAT purse for over 20 years and must have realised at the time that it was overinflated and they weren't really due it. But rather than questioning it, they spent it year after year on huge government projects like money was going out of fashion with no accountability. Just spend it before anybody in the UK notices, basically wasting it. They knew it was wrong, but did nothing. It's a disgrace, because now without that VAT, they've got nothing left. They've not built up industry, tourism or anything. They just wasted the money. They moved and swapped out departments when they knew that the UK would come calling for it back. So they knew all along it was wrong. That's all the governments for the last 20 years. They're all culpable. They're all responsible, and we're now left almost bankrupt. It's a disgrace. So they should be honest and come out and say it. But of course they never will, says Percy. He had to give the pensioners a rise under the triple lock system, but as they keep saying, protect the vulnerable, the sick and disabled get nothing, yet they've increased bills just the same. Thanks for nothing, Eddie. And that from Derek. Government should follow the system that Holland have put in place. National insurance contributions are paid by an employer on all earnings. This has reduced the need to bring in outside labour and put more people back in full-time employment, and at the same time reducing the benefits paid out. Make employers pay national insurance on all earnings is an answer. Fact. Percy for next Chief Minister, says another of our contributors. Have the MHKs downsized yet? It seems like every government department has, apart from them. It's time for cutbacks. It'd save us a bomb. That's from Dewan in Ramsey.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are changes to island driving licences a good idea, do you think? From next week, island driving licence holders will only have a card without the paperwork. The Department of Infrastructure has announced the new single-part licences will be introduced in the island from Monday, February the 22nd. Is this the right move, do you think? Will it simplify the process of issuing licences, make it cheaper? Will a one-part licence make it easier for drivers? Or are there flaws in the idea, certainly as far as using it for identification are concerned? First comment on driving licences goes to Percy. He says, hi, Stu, driving licences going back like they were 50 years ago. Why bother in the first place? Well, because without licences, you'd have anarchy on the roads, Bert. And they're not like they were 50 years ago. 50 years ago, they didn't have your picture on, for one, did they? What else? Will new licences issued still only be valid for 10 years? I presume so. I've just had a look at the notes and it doesn't say otherwise. Why can't a licence be valid until we reach 65 or whatever it is in the UK? Would that not save a lot of unnecessary administration costs, says Maureen? It probably would, but they probably quite enjoyed the revenue of having to renew your licence every now and then. Yes, I don't know whether or not that would be a good idea. Bob called, will airlines still accept it as a form of ID when you travel to the UK? I honestly don't know what the answer to that is, Bob, but as the department say, that wasn't the real purpose of the driving licence, that people could use it for identification. So that's not really their concern, I suppose. I don't know. It's got your photograph on it. It's got your name on it. So you'd need to check that with the airlines. Stu, this change is to come in line with other countries, so I can't see any problem with it. After all, when I got my first licence in the mid-50s, it was on a card. The only information in those days was your name, address and group numbers. Are the government going to abolish the road tax on vehicles in line with the UK? I don't think so. The road tax disc, yeah, they've not abolished road tax, but the disc itself. There's no mention of that from the department, but on the basis that we seem to mirror UK legislation and changes in most things, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that didn't come in at some point. The loss of the paper part of the driving licence: if you hire a car in the UK with a UK licence which has no paper part, you have to contact the DVLC to get a number. This number is used by the hire company to confirm any driving bans or whatever. Are Manx driving details stored with the DVLC? I don't think so. Also, the loss of the address will cause issues with ID, such as airports. That's from Martin, who's a frequent hirer of cars in the UK and Europe. I expect it's one of those things that'll take a while to sort of bed in. But the department says, give them a call. If you've got any concerns, give them a call. Dave called, when you hire a car, you do need the paper bit. It carries all your endorsements. It's no use going across to Manchester somewhere in the evening, going to hire a car when you get there and finding that you don't have the right documentation. Phil Gorn says he's not an expert on it, but we need more information from government. Well, he did sort of allude to the fact that there are experts in the department who've consulted various people on this to make sure that it's going to be workable. You would have thought, you would have hoped, and I'm sure that they have at some point phoned the British Vehicle Rental Association or whoever it is that looks after hire companies and said, this is what we're going to do. Is there going to be any problem with it? If not, then it's going to be a major problem, isn't it? But I'm sure that they've looked at it. I think we should go back to the green paper driving licence where they used to stick your endorsements in on a piece of paper and you could steam them out. Could you? Stu, your previous call is correct. You can't hire cars without the paper section as proof of driving history showing endorsements, etc. Well, actually, Catherine just chased him because I do have this piece of paper from the DOI which explains this, and I missed this bit, but she's highlighted it for me, helpfully. Unlike the UK, all current information, including endorsements, will be printed on your card and will be available for the vehicle rental company to see. You'll not need a check code to enable the rental company to check your details via a link to your driving record. The Isle of Man Vehicle and Driving Test Centre currently deal with requests from vehicle rental companies to confirm driving entitlements, and endorsements will continue to do so if contacted. So there you go, that's all sorted. Just been told in the post office your driving licence can't be used to say who you are because there'll be no address to verify that you're the right person. OK, the department does make the point that it was never intended to be an ID card as such. Lady on the radio last Friday told us all the information for driving licences was on the DOI website. Why don't people listen and look for themselves? Well, not everybody's got access to the internet, I suppose. Beware of politicians saying it won't change anything and cost less. I bet they're being forced to bring this new card licence in. Watch how many locals will have retrospective points and fines applied. Oh, I don't think so. Right now, no correlation between us and the UK and Europe.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the personal capability assessments being carried out at the moment be left to continue? A bid to halt the process was itself put on hold yesterday after Tynwald members voted to adjourn Douglas South MHK Kate Beecroft's motion calling for the matter to be referred to the Social Affairs Committee for review. There were a handful of emotional contributions to the debate, with a handful of Tynwald members highlighting cases which had been brought to their attention. But an amendment by the Speaker of the House of Keys means the concerns raised will now be looked at by the Social Security Division before the matter is brought back next month. Bill Henderson MLC is political member of the Treasury with responsibility for Social Security. He says he believes the work being carried out by the UK agency Dependability Limited is being totally confused with the Disability Living Allowance. Is this the most sensible outcome for the time being, do you think? Is there maybe an element of scaremongering going on over the issue? Or would you like to see the assessment scrapped altogether? Let's go to the lines. We've got Harry on. Hello, Harry.
I just wanted to say I was part of the protest on Tuesday outside Tynwald. There was only half a dozen people there, unfortunately, but it's mainly because people that were disabled couldn't make it, But
Okay.
there was not one of them had the decency to come out and say, like, to Mr. Henderson. I mean, Kate Beecroft came out and just to hear people's concerns and things, but
Yeah.
there was no interest from anybody else, which is, to me, was wrong. I thought the likes of Mr. Henderson, if he's that bothered, he would have come out and just said to listen to people's concerns,
Well, unless he was concerned that people were going to be throwing rotten eggs at him or whatever, then maybe he just, thought that it was it would have incited people if he came out.
He's putting this card forward about DLA all the time, and it's nothing to do with DLA. It's incapacity benefit.
Right.
If you're unfit for work or you're ill health retired or told you can't work, you get put on incapacity benefit. You're incapable of working.
Yeah.
And their action towards that, their solution is to take you off that, and you have to go a month without money, and then you have to sign on to job seekers allowance, which is absolutely pathetic,
Sure.
I wanted to say that I really do thank Kate Beecroft for her speech yesterday, because I knew the spin doctors would be out trying to demean her and say things about it, but she's trying to tell people what it's like out there, because politicians don't realise. I used to be a sign writer, and I prepared a 10-foot banner to hold up outside, but unfortunately the paint wasn't dry, and when I rolled it up, it all stuck together, so
Right.
I couldn't bring it with me, but it just had on it, why don't we assess government for self-centred parasites, because that's what they are.
Right, okay.
They're only concerned in themselves, they're not concerned in reality.
All right, fair dues. Thank you for your call, Harry. Let's have a look at some. We've got a good few comments about this. There should be a call for a vote of no confidence in Mr. Henderson over his handling of trying to get sick people back to work. He calls Mr. Cretney and Mrs. Beecroft for causing a furore, spin and smokescreen for highlighting the plight of genuinely sick people and the problems he's causing to the families of these folk, who themselves will end up ill with stress and more strain on the health service. As an ex-union man and staff representative, he should know these people are highly unemployable because company insurers won't let them because of risk and possible compensation claims, fact proven by one of their own occupational health doctors. So, Mr. Henderson, you should do some fact-finding of your own before putting other MHKs down. Well, I think in fairness, that's what he's doing, isn't he? There are good MHKs looking after the vulnerable, something I can't say for you, Mr. Tier and Mr. Bell. We're West Douglas constituents and we hope our MHKs have answers for this fiasco, says Derek. If working is so good for your health, ask Eddie and his sidekick Bill, why are some people in the government retiring so young, or does this health benefit only apply to the private sector? Mr. Henderson should concentrate his efforts on chasing part-time workers claiming income support. Now we know what they mean when they say they want to protect the vulnerable. Utter codswallop. Just a smoke screen, says Derek. I think this capabilities issue is an absolute disgrace, and Mrs. Beecroft is quite right to raise the matter once again, and why they've deferred for a month beggars belief. This is the last sitting for a while, so they're probably expecting it to go away or think sick and disabled people will pop the clogs and save money, says Jan. How do doctors feel about their assessments being overruled, asks somebody else. Stu, I'm sure there are lots of people on disability allowance that are worthy of being on it, but I'm also sure that there are plenty that have been on it for years who shouldn't be. Now, Sarah, this is the nub of this problem, isn't it? Because certainly on this programme over the years, we've had lots and lots of calls from people saying, oh, I know somebody that lives near me who's been on disability for years and years, out of work for years, with this, that or the other. It doesn't stop them going on holidays or doing the house up or doing jobs on the QT or whatever. And I think that that's part of the reason behind this. Perhaps they've not gone about it in the right way, but it's another system that needed looking at, as it's not been done properly for many years, says Sarah. It's a joke. It's a money-saving exercise. I've seen people in wheelchairs signing on. I've been for one of these meetings before, and if you can move a mouse, pick up a pint of milk or an empty box, you're fit for work. That's what happened to me, and they then tell your doctor that they can't sign you off again. It's a joke, says Davey. Lots of employers won't take somebody on with current health issues. I know somebody with a disability who's really struggling to get a job. Government haven't got a clue. Well, hopefully they'll find out more about it over the next month. People on DLA can also be on incapacity benefits, says Fiona. Yeah, I think that's what Bill Henderson was saying, that people are getting confused between the two. Good job, Bill Henderson jumped ship to Legco. He'd never have got his seat back, says somebody else. Well, OK, but maybe that's part of the strength of the current system of electing MLCs, that it's not something that's subject to a public vote. So is this something where Bill Henderson is actually able to look at the thing more objectively and not worry about coming up with an unpopular solution that might cost him votes? So, maybe this is a tick in the box for the current system of elected MLCs. I don't know. Just a thought. People who have signed off on incapacity benefit who are chronically ill should not be continuously having to obtain doctor's notes. In the UK, these people are moved on to another category whereby it's medically proven that they'll be unlikely to return to any kind of work because of their illness. Stop this nonsense and scaring people who are genuinely chronically sick. OK. Scrap it. Bill Henderson's just said to get your doctor to write a medical report to the DHSS. That's a load of rubbish, as your very qualified doctor has no power over these people. This from Michael. These work capability assessments were well known to cause suffering to ill people as far back as 2008 in the UK, and came more to light in 2012, where 10,000 plus ill people had died. By August last year in the UK, after over 300,000 people signed a petition to demand how many had died, it was revealed by the DWP that 91,000 ill people died in three ways. Suicide, ill people frightened of the assessments being left penniless, ill claimants sanctioned with no money for 6, 12 and 18 months after losing the benefits. Many didn't make it. And thirdly, ill people being assessed caused stress. This stress, when added to their illness, caused premature death. And that was backed up by many coroners, according to Michael. These assessments should never have been brought into the Isle of Man. Many people living here are known by as many as 5 doctors in their surgery, as well as nurses, Department of Social Care, have ill people's files on record. Social media in the Isle of Man is full of suffering from these work capability assessments. At this stage, no deaths that I've heard of, but it may only be a matter of time, as it's only been here for a year. In the UK, it's been here for 8 years. Mr. Henderson sidetracked it to concerns about DLA. Not everybody ill is on DLA. It affects all ill people, whether they get DLA or not. I hope Mr. Henderson is listening to the adverse publicity he's creating. Well done, Kate, says somebody else. Sarah says, well done, Bill Henderson. About time this is looked at. If you have a genuine case, then you'll have nothing to worry about. It's all the other layabouts who've been taking advantage that the department are looking at, and rightly so. Not sure why people think it's their God-given right to have government handouts. Those days are over. Get over it. Keep up the good work, Bill. Thanks, Stu, says Sarah. There you go. Interesting. And final comment, absolutely disagree with you. Politicians should, repeat, should, make decisions because they're right, not about votes. Integrity should rule. Well, you're right as far as I don't disagree with that at all. Integrity should rule. I would suggest, though, that many politicians, the primary motivation is getting re-elected. So it takes a brave one to vote against the public will on a lot of things.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Could people be taxed even more for buying things online? Onken MHK Peter Carron says government should consider introducing a tax on purchases that people make over the internet. During his contribution to the budget debate, Mr Carron warned island retailers were facing a grim future. He suggests a fee on each online buy would raise money for government and help protect jobs here. Is this something that you think could work? Does something need to be done to help the retail sector in the Isle of Man? And should it be an internet sales tax, or would this be a negative move? Thank God there's a stop on under-the-radar taxes, says Phil. Oh wait, internet tax. Well, that lasted all of 3 days then. Licence to print money for the local shops, according to Phil. Hi Stu, I wish Mr Carron would ask his brain before engaging the mouth. Any duty he would like to see, apart from being illegal, would see VAT added on the final price after his duty, meaning more money to the British government. Also, just buy a phone card over the counter and phone for goods, or use English Mobile. The list goes on, says Paul. Stu, I think Mr Carron's idea of taxing internet purchases is a no-go. It may be against EU rules, and it would probably cost more to enforce than it would earn. I realise that politicians want money to remain on the island, but it's also about choice. That from Norman. Internet purchase tax. Next, it'll be import tax if someone has a shopping trip to Liverpool. It costs enough to live here already, more than the income tax advantage, and everywhere else had the same challenge from internet shopping. Yes, I don't think the internet is only a threat to Isle of Man businesses. I think it's a widespread thing to retail in general. It's getting to the stage now where there are only certain types of retailers, I think, that will still be around in 10 years. And I think an awful lot of things that people can buy online, they choose to do that now because it's more convenient. It's delivered to you at home usually. It's often an awful lot cheaper, and we've talked about it before on the programme. I always try, if I can, to buy it locally first, but I'm not prepared to pay twice the price for things. And it is just so easy, isn't it, to buy things with one click on Amazon or wherever. So local shops have got to do an awful lot more in terms of added value to get your trade. We've got Terry on the line. He may disagree. Hello, Terry.
I totally agree. It's a stupid idea. It's like sitting on the beach trying to get the tide to go away. It's not going to happen.
No.
But, you know, it would be far better if they started addressing the monopolies on the island that cause the high living costs, and then we could spend money in the shops.
Right, OK. So what, things like gas, electric, the steam packet? Gas,
electric. What about fuel?
Yeah.
You know, I live in St Jude's. To go shopping, I've got to drive somewhere. The fuel here is at least 10p per litre more expensive than across. Now, how on earth can that be justified? You know, it's ridiculous.
They say it's because we're a small island, so we've got a small population, so we don't get the economies of scale. You know, they can't bring fuel in at the sort of bulk rates that they would do to a bigger jurisdiction, and so, you know, it's inevitable that we've got to pay a bit more for it.
Well, I'm led to believe that the fuel tanker actually drops half the fuel off on the Isle of Man and then carries up to Scotland.
Yeah.
And the fuel in Scotland is cheaper than the fuel here. So are we subsidising Scotland?
I sincerely hope not. OK, so it's the monopolies that we need to look at first rather than internet sales taxes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, let's get our own house in order and then people will have some free cash to use in the shops.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you very much for calling, Terry. Stu, the proposed tax on internet purchases will be virtually impossible to administer. How does Mr Carron plan to check all internet sales to the Isle of Man? It smells of a sanction on the island's right to free enterprise. What does he have in mind for click and collect at any of the large stores here serving the local population? This is little more than an additional tax over and above the normal VAT collected on all purchases. He must have got up this morning with his silly head on. Get real, Mr Carron. OK. Stu, has the Minister thought about internet tax that most small retailers have to order stock over the internet unless they're a multinational, and would they be protected, says Jan. I don't know if the thought process has gone that far, Jan. Comment, if we had decent shops, we wouldn't need to shop online. I don't think that's fair. A tax on internet shopping, whatever next. After speaking to postmen, it seems to me it's really only the likes of Amazon that are keeping the post office going. Put a tax on this and you'll find it's the post office that needs bailing out next. I reckon anyway, and that's from another Stu up north. We in the island are paying more for internet items than UK internet shoppers due to postal charges, which in some cases are £3 for UK shoppers, rises to £20 or more for cases going to the island. Well, yeah, but you can be a bit canny about that, because I've noticed that some people on sites like Amazon charge a lot more for Highlands and Islands deliveries, and there's no reason that they should, I don't think, in many cases. But if you look for the same item from other online retailers within the same sort of Amazon master site, if you like, you can often find that people do either free delivery or same price delivery as the UK. So I appreciate that you can't always do that, but it's always worth having a look. Also, when I do try to shop locally, I've been told on a number of occasions that I'd be better off going online to obtain what I was trying to buy locally, says Pete. I suppose that's honest advice, but it seems a bit strange that, you're taking food out of the retailer's mouth, so to speak, and they're suggesting that you do that. You won't be able to do this. You can't tell consumers where to shop. We'd leave if, and it's a big if, the government would be able to do this. It amounts to restriction on trade. What next? Inspecting our cars when we get off the boat to see what we bought. The answer lies in better shops on Ireland, which we won't get until we increase the population. They can't have the cake and eat it. Government, big retailers, might come here, I think that says. Stu, this is the real world. Retail in the Western world will continue to decline. More and more purchases will and are being made on the internet. To introduce a tax is a non-starter, says John. I think I agree with that, John. Come on, Stu, what a laugh. Internet tax, have a word with yourself. Love the show, says Jonesy. Good. Reference to what Peter Karen says. What a load of rubbish. Don't we pay enough already to live here, says John. We accept we live on an island, have a higher cost of living, so now Peter wants to increase that cost of living by taxing for internet purchasing. Surely the issue with retailers is their problem, and they should be more savvy to what to offer and market themselves. Sad day when freedom of choice becomes taxable. That from Ali. Public of the Isle of Man are going to get a shock one day when they come down Strand Street and find that there are no shops left. Well, they're all going to be shops that, where you can't buy that kind of thing online. I don't know about clothing. I know that people can buy clothing online, but, things that you actually want to physically touch or feel or eat or whatever, there'll always be a call for retailers on the high street that do that. But things, electronics and things like that, you can easily buy online. The answer is better shops over here. Without the internet, we'd have nought, and that goes for books as well. Really? Stu, don't government already make money out of online shopping, seeing as they own the post office? Good point. Will Peter Karen internet tax apply to the purchase of an internet bride? That might be a problem for some, says Frank. Stu, they couldn't do the internet tax. How would they collect it? Annual internet shopping returns, says Dave. I don't know. We buy nothing locally other than the food. We pay sky-high rents and double gas, apparently, compared to the UK. Bob calls, surely the easiest way to make goods cheaper here is to do away with the VAT agreement with the UK and set a lower VAT rate here. That's the only way to do it fairly. I used to buy SD cards, and if you were in no rush to get them, you could get them shipped from Jersey, where there isn't VAT. They were cheaper getting them shipped in than buying them locally. Okay. Stu, I texted you yesterday about this. Peter Karen was in my shop about 15 years ago, and I told him internet shopping would kill high street retail, and it's taken this long to spring into action. It would be too little, too late, and unpoliceable. I'm closing this year after 34 years. I can't compete anymore. That's from Chris22. That's sad. Local traders sell third-rate goods for top-rate prices. Well, not all of them. That's a bit of a sweeping generalisation. This monopoly worked as the Irish Sea prevented local shopping anywhere else. If you ended up with goods that were faulty, the local trader would say, sorry, sir, it's the manufacturer's problem, talk to them. The internet's freed people of this island from these gangsters, and as a result, certain businesses were folded. Good riddance. Peter Karen, behave. Right then.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for the latest look back at Talking Heads. Our thanks as ever to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays. Or you can share your thoughts on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters, and you can do that anytime. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com. And the website's also where you'll get an update of what we're talking about in the programme every day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on the programme, why not suggest it by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.